Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to be talking today about the continual war on science that I think Trump and his administration is doing. And what it came out this morning was 7 dirty words, supposedly, that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, can't use. And that was put out by the Trump administration. And it was something that when I first saw it, I'm not going to kid, I thought it was a joke. I actually thought it was something from The Onion. I was reading it and I'm like, oh, this is kind of, a cute little parody. Found out, not a parody. Matter of fact, even before we went on air, Jackie was still not convinced that it was not a parody. So I've done my due diligence. It appears to be legit. I've looked at the Washington Post, the LA Times, NPR, a few other sources. They all have this reporting. So I figured let's discuss a little bit. It was actually brought up initially. I first saw it by the Holy Spackle. She unfortunately has to work tonight. Wish she could have made it, but maybe she'll watch us afterwards. But she gave us her blessing on it. I've got Jade and I got Jackie. Anybody else who wants to come on in, please do. The link to join will only be posted for this in the Great Debate Community Facebook page. That's it. That's the only place it's going to have a link unless you message me directly. Then I'll give it to you. That's it. So, anyways, let's start this off. So I'm gonna read these 7 words. What supposedly the CDC cannot use in their budget and whatever documentation. I think like Jade will give us more information on that. But these are the 7 dirty words. Then I'll turn it over to her. So here we go. Or dirty words. Then by the way, the CDC is not the FCC. Those are different set of dirty words. So if you want to look this up, make sure you put CDC 7 dirty words and not FCC 7 dirty words, or you're going to get a whole different group of words. Trust me. Here we go. These are the words that they can't use, or they're banned: vulnerable, entitlement, diversity, transgender, fetus, evidence-based, and science-based. The last one being something where they actually gave a recommendation to, and we're going to jump on this real quick and talk about it as soon as we get started here. But the recommendation they gave to replace science-based is CDC bases its recommendations on science in consideration with community standards and wishes. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Jade real quick because she's probably foaming at the mouth over this as well as I am. Jade, what have you found out about this? I mean, this is legit, right? This is not comedy. This is not The Onion or the Daily Mail or something like that, or World News Daily Net. This is actually what's being put out in the news, correct?
As far as we can tell, yes. We don't have any written documentation as of yet. But let me give you the background of this. Now, like you, I searched all over the internet for this. The one place I found that has probably the best summary, it's not complete, but is Snopes. And I know a lot of people like to say Snopes is fake news, but that's only because Snopes don't want to know. Okay. Now, here's the way I'm going to... It says, the Washington Post first reported this, and it said that a senior CDC leader instructed policy analysts at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention not to use certain words in documents related to the budget and supporting materials that are to be given to CDC's partners and to Congress. Now, they were told of this list of forbidden words at a meeting on Thursday with senior CDC officials who oversee the budget. And
you're getting a hum. Is that you? Really bad hum.
I don't know why. Hang on. Freddie,
it's horrible.
Hang on. Freddie, move. Freddie, move.
Yeah, you're getting a 60 cycle hum. It sounds like you're getting a bad ground. Oh, there goes. It's intermittent.
Okay, wait. Is it better now?
No. Do you guys hear it, Heavy Holler or Jade? Jackie, do you hear it?
I hear a little fuzzy sound in the background, but I'm not sure what it is. It might be my speakers.
Freddie,
I heard a little bee. I heard a little bee.
Okay, hang on.
It's gone now.
Let me try.
It's gone now? Back. No, it's intermittent. It sounds like a grounding problem. Hey, still not as bad as the technical problems we had yesterday on Holy Cool.
Well, at least she's not cutting out every second or so.
I really had fun yesterday on Holy Cooley's channel, but the technical problems were huge because it took three attempts, and then the link for the video was different from the actual video. So, but it was fun. I really loved being on that channel. Freddie's sabotaging you. Well, she's doing that. So anyways, I'm going to be reading this off the news sources a little bit. I'm looking at Scientific America has a opinion piece on it that says the administration's war on science has taken a dangerously Orwellian turn. And I'm also looking at NPR's, which is the Trump administration reportedly instructs CDC on its own version of 7 dirty words. So those are the 2 primary sources I'll be using if anybody wants to follow along, or Jade will be using as well. This bothers me the most, the whole science thing. It's like, wait, so what do they mean by community standards? Whose community standards? What do they mean by the wishes of somebody else? So wait a minute, if people all say homeopathy is something that should be used, then because it works, then all of a sudden we just eliminate the fact that scientifically it doesn't because it's not the community standards? It just makes absolutely no sense to me. Science-based is science-based. There's a reason why we say those words science-based. It means it's based in science. Which is a little bit different than evidence-based, but science-based generally is evidence-based. Yes, Jade. Yes.
Okay, is the hum still there?
Yeah. No.
And just a reminder that this goes beyond.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not. It's not. You're good.
Just tell there or not. You said yes.
No, it's not there.
No, it's not there. There is no hum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a reminder that this whole thing goes beyond partisan politics, because I know people on the right and the left who are very big science deniers, or are into homeopathy, or however you pronounce it, and all that. So it's not even oh, these damn Republicans are ruining science. It's just there's a large group of science deniers out there who want to sabotage progress.
And that's a good point. This is nonpartisan, right? I do not want to make this into a Republican or Democrat thing. Not at all. I don't care what political party Trump is affiliated with. This has to do, like you said, about science.
Yeah.
Jay, John, going to continue where we left off. And by the way, like this video. We're getting all these thumbs up now, so
okay,
keep going.
So anyway, what happened is there's a meeting with the CDC, Office of Financial Services. The CDC policy analysts, meeting with policy analysts at the CDC. And it says the meeting about the banned words was led by Allison Kelly, a senior leader in the agency's Office of Financial Services. Kelly did not say why the words are being banned and told the group she was merely relaying the information. Others, this was originally reported by one policy analyst, and since then has been confirmed by other CDC officials. And it is possible that other parts of Health and Human Services are operating under the same guidelines, and so the various different, journalist news outlets are looking into this to try to see how extensive this is. And Steve has already read the list of words. And nobody is saying why they're being prohibited. I find it very disturbing that these are being prohibited, but I want to go back in time for just a minute. Skeptical, but let's not forget. That was a good one. Let's not forget that not long ago, the U.S., not only the EPA, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture were forbidden to use certain words. And
I do remember
the
that.
administration changed the EPA website to remove all vestiges of climate change. So this is what's happening here, is that scientific terminology is being replaced by political terminology. Now, at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I think most people know about the EPA. Not as many know about the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. All these acronyms can get a little crazy. And so a list of phrases to be avoided includes climate change and climate change adaptation. They are to be replaced by weather extremes and resilience to weather extremes. Climate and weather are not the same thing.
Climate is long-term things. Whether it can be tomorrow's can be sunny. Climate change is much longer periods of overall change globally, or
and climate
specific area as well. Sorry.
when we think of weather, generally refers to what is occurring in the atmosphere. Climate is also what's happening on the ground and in the water. It's more than it's integrated. So it's far more than weather. So that's just also blacklisted is the phrase reduce greenhouse gases. And in case you know what we're using instead of that, remember the phrase is reduce greenhouse gases. The replacement phrase is increase nutrient use efficiency.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
What is
that?
How are those related, by the way, Jade? What does greenhouse gas have to do with nutrient?
I have absolutely no idea.
Do they know what a greenhouse gas is?
It sounds to me like in using the terms increase nutrient use efficiency, it sounds to me like they're moving all of this onto plants and how we farm. When reducing greenhouse gases has far more to do with that than that.
Yeah.
So this is a strange.
Yeah, greenhouse emissions can come from many different sources. I mean,
idea.
it can come from your AC unit, for goodness sake. I mean,
yes.
That's a big thing, actually. Believe it or not, leaking emissions from your air conditioner because of Freon.
Yeah, and so increased nutrient use efficiency has nothing. Replacing the term climate with weather is bad enough. I mean, it is really, really bad if you understand the difference between climate and weather. But to change reduce greenhouse gases into increased nutrient use efficiency is the equivalent of going through the looking glass, where everything is not what it is.
We're in bizarre world at this point.
Yeah, well, either place.
We've walked into Ronnie's land of make believe, basically.
Exactly.
Because this is
and
so strange.
And since this administration has begun, there has essentially been a war on science, which prompted something really remarkable and is still kind of mind-blowing to me. Was the march for science, not just in Washington D.C., not just here in the United States, but around the world. There were people around the world marching for science, even in small communities, because of the administration's attitude towards science. And this includes, by the way, their attitude towards vaccines. There are a number of vaccine deniers or vaccine questioners, to put it more politely.
Or safe vaccine advocates.
Yes, in the administration.
Or vaccine skeptics.
So this is part of the whole. As for replacing these words, you've heard of the war on poverty?
Oh, yeah.
Well, to me, that's exactly what this looks like.
Yeah.
But poverty. Rather, the original war on poverty was designed to reduce poverty, to try to eradicate poverty, well, as best they could, because, it's hard to eradicate. If you're going to take away the words vulnerable, entitlement, and diversity, what you're doing is you're going to diminish, not the best word, but the impact of the poor. Not the best phrasing, but I think you know what I mean. Because who's going to be more affected by this are poor people. And this can be very scary when you consider something like vaccines and disease. We're seeing a resurgence of a number of diseases. Yemen right now, because of the war situation, is having an epidemic of diphtheria, of all things. There was something else in the news just the other day that is, Legionnaire's disease is having a resurgence here in the United States.
Yeah, there's been a couple outbreaks of that recently.
Right. So, and the most vulnerable populations are the poor, children, and the elderly, and those who have compromised immune systems. So the term vulnerable has a lot of meaning, especially in terms of the CDC. When you are looking at diseases, disease outbreaks, or potential disease outbreaks, you need to focus on vulnerable populations. Because some people might think, well, gee, I'm not part of a vulnerable population. What do I care? Well, if a disease takes root in a vulnerable population, like the poor. Oh, yeah, and like illegal immigrants. If it takes root in a vulnerable population, then there's a greater chance that it will expand to the general population. Let me give you kind of an idea of what I'm talking about. A few decades ago, there was a cholera outbreak in. Now, excuse me if I don't remember whether it was there was a cholera outbreak in Peru and a cholera outbreak in Ecuador, and I think it was the one in Peru that was threatening to us. Okay, and I believe it was because of contaminated fish meal. I have to look that up. But the important part is there was a cholera outbreak. Now, the world we have today has people hopping on planes all the time. And I think most people understand that you can have a disease and be able to pass it on before you show all of the symptoms of the disease. So some people who were possibly infected with cholera, people who were in the vulnerable area, people who belonged to populations in which the cholera was rampant, came to the United States. They landed at LAX. The CDC and the Los Angeles County Health Department jumped on this. And they tracked down every single person who might have come in contact with the cholera and might have, contracted it. Now, I don't remember what the results of that were, and they probably didn't. But we do, in other words, what I mean by that is I don't remember if they found anybody who actually had cholera. But they did move very, very quickly to contain any possibility of an outbreak. Did not enter Los Angeles. And I want you to stop and think about how big Los Angeles is and how easy it would be for cholera to spread through, say, contaminated food. Somebody works in a fast food restaurant or something, and cholera has had devastating effects on the world in terms of cholera outbreaks. And you can look that up if you want to know more about cholera. If we had, say, Fiona or somebody in here around who could talk to us more about cholera, that would give you an idea. So this is what's scary. Also, a few decades ago, there was an outbreak of a mysterious disease in the Four Corners area, and it was killing people. And people did not, the CDC went in there, and it was a mystery. It was scary. Nobody could figure out what was going on for a while. And in hindsight, the move to contain it was very quick, and the move to discover what it was fairly rapid too. But you have to remember, in weeks, just weeks, a disease can travel very fast, especially when you have air travel. Well, it turned out to be a variation of the hantavirus, which is carried by rodents. And in the desert, there are lots of little mice and things like that it could have been carried with. So we do have outbreaks of disease in this country. And here in the West, the plague, the Black Plague, that thing that devastated much of the world more than once, it's endemic in rodents. There are cases of the plague every year in California. The versions we get here are mostly the bubonic plague, that's the flea bites. Sometimes the septicemic plague, and that's the kind that's spread by, touching the dead bodies of something that has the plague. And in this case, it's usually somebody who's maybe rabbit hunting, and they may have a cut on their hand or an abrasion, and the plague gets in there. The bubonic plague today is handled fairly easily and quickly with antibiotics. The septicemic is a little tougher, but if you catch it in time, again, you can get it. The scary version is the third one, and that's the one that caused the devastation. That's the pneumonic form. It gets in the lungs, and people spread it by coughing. It has a high rate of infection, and it can pass from person to person very quickly. There have been books. There's one I remember that's actually really good in terms of the epidemiology of a possible plague outbreak. And the way it worked is a girl visited Monterey, took the plane back to New York, took the bus back to New York, during which the plague incubated, ended up spreading it to a whole bunch of people in New York. Now, that's a story. Yeah. Is it a possibility? Sure. Especially since people in places like New York, doctors having people come in with flu symptoms would not notice the plague. People in the Southwest, doctors and physicians, would notice, plague, another one. People in the Boston, New York, Chicago, I don't know how well aware of something like the plague, the physicians in emergency rooms, very, very crowded emergency rooms, would recognize the symptoms of the plague. So if people think, and so far, by the way, there hasn't been a case of pneumonic plague in quite a long time. I'd have to look it up to see what it is. But so if you think that diseases are gone, they're not. Legionnaires is back. Cholera is ravaging Yemen. These old diseases are still here. The plague is still in rodents. They haven't disappeared. And is it possible that we could have an epidemic? Sure it is. I want you to look at the 1917 flu outbreak, for one thing. The pandemic, which was a horrific thing all over the world. And today, we one of the things that we spend a lot of money on, people all over the world spend a lot of money on, is tracking flu viruses and trying to get the flu shot correct. But the flu mutates pretty quickly. So you can get a shot for the flu, and you get a variant of it anyway. So it doesn't. But scientists do the best they can to stop us from having an outbreak like the pandemic. And believe me, I've read articles. I'm subscribed to I think it's the CDC infectious disease newsletter, and so it tells you about like what's going on around the world and what outbreaks there have been. And so don't think that just because we have modern medicine we're going to be able to cure things very quickly. Don't think that we can't have outbreaks, and even if they're localized, a localized outbreak can injure or kill thousands of people or hundreds of people, and that's still really bad, especially if it's someone you know. And one of the ways to stop outbreaks from happening is to focus on vulnerable. So this is pretty scary. Just that one word, I find, to try to remove that one word, I find very scary. Now, I don't know yet, I don't think any of us know in what context they don't want the word vulnerable to be used. Perhaps they're thinking in terms of vulnerable populations and in terms of, I don't know. It's a CDC. If it's a vulnerable population.
There was no context given. There was no context given in any of these words. That's the problem. No. And even still, I would like to know. We do have somebody who knows about law in the live chat right now. What the legality is? What precedents do they have to tell the CDC what words they can or cannot use? I don't know how that even comes to be. But I think you're right with this word vulnerable. How do you talk about specific populations that are more vulnerable to a certain disease or something like that by location or by demographics or whatever? Or when you say something like, oh, well, this person has not been vaccinated for this, they are more vulnerable to these things. And going back a little bit further, I kind of want to ask, we have a person who is a practitioner in the live feed. Is there any studies done on normally, let's say at this point in time, how often you would see somebody with diphtheria come in, or pertussis or rubella? There's probably, most people would probably say, I would think that they'd go a long period of time in a career and not even ever see a case of these things. They're just not that common because of vaccinations. But now, because of people not vaccinating their kids, has there been any studies done to show there has been an increase with the average physician saying, oh, here's a person who came in my office, oh, you know what? They've got whooping cough. Oh, they've got diphtheria. And as a physician, even remembering these symptoms, these things, I mean, I would think that most people, the first thing they would come to mind would be, oh, yeah, this person, has diphtheria. No, I mean, I don't know if they're specifically even trained anymore to look for these viruses and diseases as a general practitioner. So if they can, in the live feed, give me some feedback on that, that'd be great. But do you understand what I'm saying on that? I mean, how long? Well, I mean, how much in a lifetime?
Well, similar. I was going to say similar to what I pointed out about the plague. Is some doctor in a busy emergency room in New York City going to recognize the plague?
That's my question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him the link right now. But exactly, even German measles. I mean, is somebody going to recognize that as rubella, or are they going to recognize it as a rash, or is that the same thing? German measles is rubella, isn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yes. When I was in high school, there were a lot of rubella outbreaks, German measles, and what people were told was not to take any chances. You get a rash, assume it's rubella, and stay away from pregnant women because it's devastating.
And nowadays, I don't think that's nowadays. I mean,
I don't think a lot of people would. Yeah, well, people just don't get rubella anymore because we vaccinate against it.
Well, but they are.
Nobody ever gets it.
There's definitely a resurgence of it. I have read that the MMR virus, some of the MMR vaccine people aren't taking, and I said one of the things is rubella on that.
Right.
But if you get a lesion, is a doctor, is a general practitioner or a hospital going to look at a lesion and go, "Oh, this is due to diphtheria"? I don't know how they make those differential diagnoses to begin with, because I'm not a doctor. But those things, I would think, at some point, would almost be they would be gone. They'd be eradicated because of vaccines. But no, there's a resurgence now.
Too many things look like the flu, or a cold, or just regular stuff that people get, at least in the early stages, or as a variant. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if, it'd be interesting to look at the medical journals. I mean, I read science journals. I don't look at medical journals, but interesting to see, are they telling, I would assume, given the circumstances, the way things are, that the medical journals are warning physicians to keep on the lookout for these things, to not assume a rash is just a rash and think maybe it's the measles because people are not vaccinating. And that's a question that they need to ask. And when?
Yeah, I'm sure there's got to be some studies on it. I'm really kind of curious. So RSC, I gave you the link. Come on in. And he said they're still heavily tested on board exams. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah, rubella is I'm pretty sure I haven't really researched this, but I thought MMR. I thought it was measles, mumps, rubella, but maybe I'm wrong. Is that what it is? Do you guys remember the MMR virus? Oh,
the MMR. They've added a couple of other things to it, I think.
Yeah, so they have, but I think it's measles, mumps, rubella.
Yeah, I thought it was measles, mumps, and rubella. So,
yeah.
So let's ask an expert. One sec. We got something here.
Before we get too far along, I made a list of alternate words that we can use instead of the ones.
I can't wait for this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, bear with me. This is a little long. Diversity will become uniformity. Entitlement will become disempower. Evidence-based will be hearsay. Fetus, a human with more rights than the mother. Science-based will be faith-based. Transgender will be cisgender. And vulnerable will be worthless, or put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye.
And that's generally the way it's heading. It seems. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. RSC. So let me ask RSC real quick because he jumped in for this.
Okay. Yeah.
RSC, you there?
Yes. You hear me?
Okay.
Hello.
So you said that these are still tested, and so you're familiar with the symptoms for these things.
Yes. So doctors are still trained for these diseases. You can't get certified without taking the board exams, and the board exams do include these. Obviously not as much, and it is possible for these things to be missed because with the rare instance that they would come through, it's possible that they wouldn't come with the universal symptoms of, it's cholera, the diarrhea, the exposure to the feces and everything. And it is possible that it gets missed, but the nice thing is, when you see a patient for the first time who's acutely ill like this, you're going to treat them for everything until you have an answer, until you get like a culture result back or something that tells you, like if it's Legionella, you do a urine screen and you test for the Legionella antibody and antigen. If it's there, then you know that you're dealing with Legionella. If it's something that's a little more difficult, like the hantavirus, that actually you wouldn't catch initially, regardless whether you were looking for it or not. You would still treat with antibiotics initially, and then once you get the results back from like DNA or RNA viral results, then you will have a better idea of what you're treating. But for things like Hanta, there isn't really anything other than you try to keep them alive. For things like the diphtheria, the cholera, you have antibiotics, and you're going to be using those whether you catch it or not, if you're doing everything appropriately. So I hope that clears it up.
So would like a broad spectrum antibiotic kind of work for most of these things, or do these things require targeted type antibiotics?
Yes, broad spectrum is basically what you're going to get if you're acutely ill to start, and then eventually, as physicians get more and more information about what's going on. And eventually, we would assume that we would get an answer that, okay, we find out what the bug is specifically. Then we narrow down or change the antibiotics to target that infection specifically. And whether the infection is resistant to something, those results come back as part of the cultural results. We'll know what antibiotics would be ineffective against this bug versus which ones will work very well. And so decisions are made based on those results.
How long does it take for a culture like that to get back?
2 to 3 days.
It is.
It takes time. Those first couple of days, though, those people are generally on contact procedures, which means you wear a mask, you wear a gown, you do everything to protect yourself with the proper equipment when you go see these patients.
You assume the worst.
Yeah, you assume the worst, and then as you get the answers, then you change their status. I mean, it could be anything from complete isolation if you're afraid of something like TB with aerosol procedures to, if it's just something that's a little less likely, like cholera, you're not going to spread that as long as you're doing the washing the hands and everything appropriately. So those arrangements are made.
Do most people die of these things only because they're not treated early enough? Because they don't know what they have. They don't think they're that sick. Or is it sometimes if you just get these diseases, you're screwed either way? Like you get TB.
It depends on the disease. So like cholera, 50% of the people will die if they don't get treatment. So do you want to take that risk? I mean, the main thing is you make sure that they stay hydrated and things like that. Those people will still do good. But most people, you still want to give them the antibiotics, make that risk of dying almost zero with antibiotics. That's just the acceptable way to practice medicine. You don't want to put people at risk that isn't unnecessary. But for others, like for cholera, there's really nothing you can do to minimize. I think like 15 to 20% of people who get hantavirus die. No matter how much support, if you put them in the ICU, if you can do everything for them, they're still going to die. We don't have any better answers at this point in time.
But is it because?
So I mean, it really depends on what you find.
But let's say somebody does have cholera. Is it because they die only because they have like massive amount of diarrhea and they get so dehydrated they just don't think that it's something that's going to pass, or they don't realize how dehydrated they're getting? Is that that's what's causing most of the deaths on something like that?
Yeah, a lot of the times. I mean, these deaths are mostly in countries where access is also a big problem. They don't have the access to the medical care. And when you are sick, especially if you don't have the right kind of support, you don't get that kind of attention. The people don't keep you basically nourished. You don't keep getting fluids and things like that. That can trigger a cascade of any different things. Not just, you're being dehydrated. Well, being dehydrated can affect the way you think, the way your brain works, make you more prone to getting clots. It can give you a heart arrhythmia problem. You can get an arrhythmia, have a heart attack because of that. So, I mean, the complications that occur because of it all come from that common source. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Would you say would you say there is a resurgence generally across the board in some of the diseases, or it's still mostly localized areas, even in the United States, like out south where there's anti-vaxxers more prevalent?
It is definitely, we are very lucky that it's been contained so far. So the outbreaks, the CDC and these people who follow this religiously, to put it in a nice term, they've done a very nice job at making sure these things don't spread. Just recently, I mean, you probably haven't even heard of this, but there were hepatitis A outbreaks that occurred in restaurants and things like this.
I did hear about that, yes.
This stuff all goes under the table. I mean, you don't hear about it in the news because once one person gets it, I mean, they get in contact with everyone within 24 to 48 hours, and these people are all managed somewhere. They're seen by providers. So they've done a good job at that. The problem is going to be, like, this flu season's coming up. And we base kind of what we think is going to happen with the flu on how it goes in Australia, because their winter is our summer and vice versa. Well, they had a really bad flu season. So we're anticipating a very bad flu season here in the U.S.
Yeah, that hep break that you talked about, actually there's like 19-20 people that died from it, and there was hundreds of cases that had it. It was huge, and yet, yeah, it's kind of swept under the rug a little bit, huh?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you talk to people in the hospital, most of them don't even know anything about it. Physicians, nurses, I mean, everyone alike. It has gone unreported. Unless you specifically deal with epidemiology or infectious disease, you probably haven't heard of it.
Well, I don't deal with those, but I keep track of the news all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was local news for you, right, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, it's only 120. It happened in San Diego. Go ahead, Jade, sorry.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. In the time I've lived here, of course, I live in a little county. Yeah, it's a small county. Every time there's been a hepatitis A outbreak, it's made the news, and they've had it on the both in the newspapers and on the television, that if you patronize this particular restaurant, you'd better be checked out. So every time we have a hepatitis A outbreak, everybody knows it. Of course, I said it's a small county, and everybody knows everything anyway. So.
Yeah, and the scary thing about those kind of diseases, when you get them, it doesn't matter how good your health is before you get the disease. In people, it's just almost like a game of roulette, whether you lands on double zeros for you or not. Because once it does, your health just goes down, and a lot of times there's nothing you can do about it. For those people who got the hepatitis A, some of them were probably a little more vulnerable, but I mean, I think it's like maybe 1 in 20 or maybe 1 in 10. You could be in great health and you just suddenly develop complete liver failure and you need a liver transplant almost immediately or you're going to die. If they can't find a liver for you,
you're screwed. Is hepatitis A like B? From what I remember, B. Once you contract hepatitis B, you basically have it for life, right? Is hepatitis A?
No, hepatitis B is.
Was that C?
If I remember the numbers right, there's a rule of threes. So 30% of people who get hepatitis B will have it chronically forever. So, okay. I mean, the odds are good that if you get exposed to it, you'll just become immune to it in the future.
Is that just due to antigen?
But the people who do,
that what it's based
on?
Yeah,
you'll develop an antigen that will clear the virus. But the 30% of people who do end up getting it chronically, 3% of them will go on to become liver failure and bad things like that. But that 30%, they will carry the virus for the rest of their life. They can expose people for the rest of their life.
So are they a carrier of it, or they actually have symptomatic of it as well?
They can be they're a carrier for the rest of their life. But
always a carrier.
They develop symptoms it's very different from person to person. Some of them will go their entire lives not even know that they have Hep B until they go for a surgery. They go get a joint replacement in their 70s, and oh wait, by the way, we found out you had Hep B. That kind of a thing happens frequently.
Okay, because they could be just
with the baby boomers.
They could be like typhoid and just be completely carrier, but not symptomatic ever throughout their life.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Interesting. Anyways, real quick, Jade, I didn't want to go too far off the path. I know I took it over to RSC real quick, but did you want to say something about transgender real quick with Heavy you brought up?
Yeah, I was eating something at the moment.
You have to be reminded. So, and they'll get back to RSC.
You noticed that they... Yeah, okay. They say they want to remove the word transgender. Noticed in some of the right-wing media that people are trying to say that, transgender, try to replace the term transgender with the term gender dysphoria. Now, I believe, again, this is a political situation. Transgender or transgenderism is not the same as gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is listed in the DSM. Is it 5 now we've got? DSM-5.
Yeah, I have the 3 here.
Okay.
DSM-5 is the most current.
Yeah, it's the most current.
Is a mental disorder. But it does not refer to being transgender. Or mental disorder, maybe not the right term. I'm not.
No, mental disorder is the right term for the DSM-5.
It is the right term. Okay.
Yeah, but
I'm just.
Is it?
I
Go ahead.
Okay. Gender dysphoria refers to those people who are having a great deal of trouble their transgenderism. In other words, they may be suffering from anxiety and other.
I just want to step in there, Jade. Transgenderism is actually not a word. So it would be transgender people, because transgender is referring to people who are, transgender, so transgender people, and then gender dysphoria is the illness that the mental disorder that most of them suffer.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, gender dysphoria is the mental illness. Being transgender is not
Disorder.
a mental illness.
There is a distinction between a disorder and a mental illness.
Yeah, and just a
corrected myself, sorry.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but transgender, as far as I understand, is anybody who just doesn't identify with the what would be their biological sex, or what they think
they're assigned sex at birth.
Assigned sex. There you go.
Yes, right.
Okay, so some people are quite comfortable with that. They're like, yeah, I mean, they're obviously probably not happy about it, but they don't experience this huge amount of dysphoria about it. That seems to be a completely different level of anxiety for somebody who has a transgender issues. That just it's a completely different thing to me.
Exactly, but the point I think that I've seen in some of the right-wing media, and label all people who are transgender as mentally ill.
That's just whacked.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure, go for it.
Please.
So just a quick note. So in the past, back in the days of DSM-3, basically DSM is just a manual that reports the statistics of mental disease in the population. And every so often, I think every 15 or 20 years, it gets updated with the most recent statistics. So the newest version is DSM-5, but back in the days of DSM-3, so we're talking 30 years ago or so, the transsexualism wasn't necessarily listed as a disease itself, but it was considered, if you didn't identify with the sex or gender assigned at birth, that it was a disease state. That has changed now. It is basically considered by most psychiatrists to be a disease state if it causes excessive mental dysphoria, it causes lots of mental problems. If it basically affects your health to the point where you can't function as a normal person in society, then it's considered a disease.
Well, wouldn't it be your health or
person who undergone a transition and is happy and content with their life, that wouldn't be labeled.
Yeah, wouldn't it just be your health or also like your social relationships as well? Like it doesn't impair you in any way, shape, or form.
Right, but I mean, your social relationships may change if you undergo a transition, because you can't control how other people react.
Yeah, but like I mean, in virtue of itself, like a paranoid schizophrenic is going to have a very difficult time in trusting people and forming meaningful relationships. Whereas somebody who transitions, if the other person can't cope with that, that's on them. It's not a problem of the symptom itself, kind of thing.
Right. Basically, the person is able to, carry out all the functions of, maintaining their own home life, keeping up with a job, not suffering undue stress, anxiety, things like that. If those things aren't causing them problems where they're seeking medical attention, they wouldn't be labeled with that condition at this point in time.
But do you agree, though? Do you think that Jade's right? They're seemingly trying to take this move to label anybody who's transgender into some kind of mental disease rather than, well, I mean, it is.
Yes, that is.
I mean, it's not disease,
but it's underlying sort of tone with
definitely not a disease. Unless it affects their lives in a demonstrable way, that they're trying to say anybody who thinks they're transgender is a mental disorder or disease, I should say.
Yeah,
and I mean, would it be fair to say it's a mental disorder of some kind? I mean, it does affect the mind. Jade, is it inappropriate to say it's a mental disorder?
If it affects their, like you said, if gender dysphoria is a mental disorder.
That clearly is a mental disorder. Yes.
Transsexualism is not a mental disorder.
Gotcha.
Well said.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks. That makes sense.
So, yeah, but that's different. What I've seen is this trying to blur the lines here to try to label all trans people as being mentally ill.
Is this like laying the groundwork for that? But why is the CDC though? Why specifically the CDC that they're putting that narrative to them? Because that's disease control. This isn't the American Psychiatric Society or something like that.
I don't know. I don't know why. What the thing that has been pointed out is that this may be a new thing in health and human services altogether. and the CDC is under Health and Human Services. So some of these 7 dirty words may not be specifically for the CDC, but for the Health and Human Services altogether.
I
See what
got
I'm
you.
saying?
Yeah, so
Right.
they're just a part of that. So they're trying to be consistent across the board with the Health and Human Services.
Right.
Well, I can tell you, I
Right,
know a lot of people involved in Health and Human Services, and I don't think any of them would agree with any of this. They would balk
Excuse
this
me.
immensely.
Just they're trying to replace science with politics. And some of it is religiously based politics. Let's be clear.
No kidding.
I totally
And-
think so.
Yeah, eliminating
Right.
the word fetus is very telling of that.
Yeah, let's move on to. Can we kind of go through these words a little bit? I mean, we've already talked about
let's go to
vulnerable,
the
but
next. Yeah.
I think we all agree on that one, and we talked about transgender. Let's look at the word fetus. Clearly, I think this is it kind of goes without saying, it has to be the abortion debate.
Yeah, how are you supposed to talk about the Zika virus, by the way, without saying the word fetus?
Yeah, you can't talk about these viruses and how they affect fetuses without using the word fetus, which is different from the word baby, which is different from the word zygote, which is different from the word embryo. These are all different words that mean different things. Do they not, RSC? Conventionally speaking.
Well, could I say that I think I know what they want?
Sure.
I suspect they want to use the term or a similar term to unborn child.
Yeah, because you know why? You know why, obviously, but the people that are listening,
Yes.
I think it's probably because they want to put this humanistic aspect to the word fetus, that it's a actual person, to give it attributes of a person, that rather than just something that is not yet developed to be a human yet.
Basically, to ban abortion.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you agree with that? Okay.
Even if you are pro-life, like using the term fetus is not the moral thing to do, so it's just ridiculous.
But the word fetus does have a very specific meaning in terms of embryonic development, if I'm not mistaken. Now, obviously, PZ Myers would be the person to ask on that, but I think it has to do. There's a certain amount of weeks that you in that period. That's what it's referred to as a fetus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are actually different terms, if I remember correctly, for the different stages. Even within what we call a fetus, I'd have to check on that. But you do run into some problems here, because all fetuses are not viable. So instead of saying unviable fetus, are they going to have to say unviable unborn child?
Yeah, that just doesn't make much sense.
This doesn't make sense, and I don't think that it's been thought through. And again, I think it's just simply a political move. And it's disgusting when you let politics override science to the degree. I mean, it's always disgusting when you let politics override science, but you're always going to have some influence in science by politics. You know that. But when you look at the degree to which this administration has gone, it's just absurd.
It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah. So, but yes, I think they're trying to lay the groundwork for banning abortion, or at least pacifying their constituency, pacifying the extreme right, who's happy to think that abortion is going to be banned, whether it is or not. Because we've seen in the past, just even in the last couple of years, the number of right to life, right-wing, family-oriented Republican politicians who tried to make or did make their mistresses have abortions. They're only pro-life when it doesn't mean them. When it doesn't mean
they're
their
hypocritical shit.
Well, that's kind of been known for a long time, is that if you look at the statistics of of the regions that are most likely to have abortions, it's the regions that are the most religiously evangelical that have the most abortions.
Right, and part of the reason for that is because they don't bleeping teach sex ed properly.
Yeah, huge.
I wish Van the Man was here so I could make fun of him. Because Lubbock, Texas, is first in teen pregnancy, as well as repeat teen pregnancy.
Yes. Yeah, the entire state of Texas is highest in repeat teen pregnancies. And they also have a really pathetic sex education program. I know Shadow Heathen has pointed out that his kids, this is really ironic because he's in Texas, right? So his kids went to church to get sex education.
Wow.
Because they weren't getting it in the schools. Mind you, it was a Unitarian church who I understand has a very excellent sex education program.
Well, so I would say the exact opposite. Growing up in Texas and having gone to school, I got a great sex education through my, public school.
Well, good.
And one of these days you might actually have an RSD.
I probably would live in what would be considered a very, upscale neighborhood, though. So I probably had that benefit.
Yeah, it's going to vary.
Yeah, I think it does vary throughout different, demographics. I mean, especially if you're more suburb, rural, affluent, non-affluent, they're gonna teach things differently in different systems. I've seen it happen. I've lived all over the United States, and I can tell you right now, there is no set standard as far as this in certain schools districts. Because I've talked to people, they can tell you right now, like for example, where I'm at in this particular area, yeah, it's not even on their agenda. Sex education. My daughter hasn't really even been exposed to it yet.
The real problem I see with it is that it can't be a one-time thing, and that's how it was when I was growing up. You get one time, you get exposed to sex ed at I think like
mine was sixth grade. It was fifth or sixth grade.
You never hear about it again. It should be a thing that's done every year for every student.
Yeah, let's separate the boys and girls. You had the boys go one way, the girls go the other way, and you didn't know what the hell was going on. You're like, what the hell is this? Whatever.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be improved.
Oh, it was ridiculous. I didn't learn shit from it.
Yeah,
of course, I'm 47. I still don't know much about sex, so whatever.
And back when I was in the sixth grade, they had started. I mean, for people in that age group, they had a thing for sex ed, and they had the boys and the girls together. The girls were going, and the boys were kind of sitting there going, he, 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 he. But then later,
whenever the word penis is mentioned, everyone bursts out laughing.
Yeah. Well, when you're in fifth grade, penis is funny.
That's still
the word's funny. Come on. Yeah, it's still kind of funny. Penis.
But there were also classes in other grades after that, like in junior high. They would have like a thing, kind of a follow-up, I guess, maybe, to get the attention of the kids that are, growing up a little bit. Maybe they think they know it all. And no, wait, no, we got to educate you a little bit more on this. So that was good. And I live in North Carolina. So for us, I think that was pretty good. And they had that at least in the schools I went to.
Well, let me ask you guys, since I got you here, and people are kind of bringing up in the live chat a little bit, but do you think that the exposure in sex education should go beyond just, teaching the biological aspects of sex, to talk about things like homosexuality or transgender? Should those things be brought up at an early age or later age or somewhere in between? Where do you think that conversation needs to be held?
Obviously at an early age.
Yeah, I mean, that's my personal view, but I mean, that's again my individual view. I want to hear from other people, especially Heavy Holler. I mean, would you have been comfortable back then talking about these things at fifth and sixth grade? That's what my concern is.
No, I would. No.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just
to be fair, nobody's comfortable talking about those things with a room full of kids.
This is true. This is true. I mean, I got to admit, the people that do go have these discussions with adolescents and kids, that takes a hell of a skill set. It really does.
Yeah, I don't there would be kids that they're not ready to hear this stuff yet. I mean, I'm thinking maybe like junior high, senior high, but in elementary, no, but they are doing it. They have little books, little story books.
Yeah.
Instead of Jack and Jill, it's Jack and Bill. But
they have the internet.
For some reason, I'm uncomfortable with young kids being exposed to a lot of this stuff.
And that's a fair point. That's why I'm wondering how much exposure they have. I think it should be early, but there's a nominal amount way of doing it. I mean, like somebody's in the live feed, I don't really want to say who, but somebody's in the live feed saying, well, they should be taught early that homosexuality is not normal. Well, that's completely fucking retarded. I mean, there's nothing normal about homosexuality. To teach a kid that it's not normal, all you're doing is, one, you're misleading them, and two, you're basically giving complete misinformation.
Well, what I would say to that is it depends on how you're using the word normal.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're talking about, okay, let's look at your probability curve distribution of people that are heterosexual versus homosexual. Sure, there's a normality factor, but they're not using it statistically. They're actually using that word normal to mean something other than that, as in, oh, it is abnormal.
Well,
like
the way that they're using it is to say that it's not permissive. Like,
yeah, but if you go to a doctor and they say
you can't be this.
Hey, no, well, it's more than that, I think. If you go to a doctor and they use the word abnormal, that means something that is outside of the norm medically, right? That's something that needs to be checked out.
That means
right?
that they're going to be naming something after you, and that's never a good thing.
Well, no, I mean, you just say you have a panel that comes back and you have some, your HDL is abnormally out of range or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, to say that it's not normal, it makes no sense to me. Absolutely no sense. It makes no sense.
One thing I will say though is, like, in this generation now, not talking about when I was a kid, which was ancient history, but right now there is more about gays. They're more out there on TV and movies, even comic books. There are some superheroes that are gay, stuff like that. So it's more out there, and they get exposed to it anyway, but hopefully in a healthy way. Now, back when I was a kid, like for me and maybe some others that I found out later were gay that I went to school with, like we would be worried and kind of real uptight that someone's going to find out and shit's going to hit the fan and stuff. Me especially, I did not know of any source or anyone I could go talk to about this. Now, if kids do know that if they have questions, here's where you can go. This person you can go talk to, and this person you can trust. But back when I was coming up, that didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. And do you think it's more prevalent now that people do have places they can go to talk about this stuff? Because I think so.
It is far more prevalent now. Like my nephews and my niece go to a Catholic school, and they have counselors who basically specifically deal with transgender and homosexual students. They're there just to counsel them, just to help them through and explain to them that this doesn't make you bad.
Yeah, and here's the thing, these things have been around since the dawn of age, I'm sure. I mean, there's nothing in the modern time to say, because it's 2017, people are starting to become more gay. No, these have been around forever. It's just that now we have better ways of dealing with it and explaining to people help them.
I think,
and so yeah, I think that's obviously a great thing, but I really think there are some people that think as time progresses, because of this war on science, that somehow science is making people gay, they're making gay frogs kind of thing.
I think that's a good way of like deciding when would it be appropriate to teach kids about different family structures or about sex education is when did the kids actually start asking about it?
Junior high.
Yeah. Well, it could be even earlier than that. Just a simple family structure where it's like you have your 8-year-old kid come home and go, "Hey, why is it that my best friend has 2 dads?" Kind of thing.
Right. Well,
you're going to have that conversation.
Yeah. But that is exactly one of the criteria for having these discussions with kids in school.
Yeah.
If you've got a bunch of kids in first grade and you've got somebody who's got 2 dads or 2 moms, you bring out the little book, Heather Has 2 Mommies, or the equivalent, or the Gay Penguin book.
Well, it's kind of funny.
To introduce the fact that there are different kinds of families.
My daughter had the book, Why Does My Dad Have 4 Girlfriends? Because he's a stud.
Oh.
I thought it was because he's a Mormon.
Yeah, right.
I'm just kidding.
But I wanted to add,
my daughter still knows I had a lot of. She even asked me today, Daddy, you need to get a girlfriend, and it just like right in front of my mom's head. Honey, after your mom, I don't want another one. Trust me.
That your daughter had that book is so much better, considering that you used to be a Mormon.
Yeah, well, I have the book somewhere, but I've also got Catholic
one
books.
Thing I wanted to say about this is how to teach it. Is there's more to sex than the physical act.
Now
there's the physiological understanding, as they used to put it in when I was in school, understanding your changing body, which is always very awkward. One of the reasons is because they waited till 6th grade to show you the stupid video. Now, as a kid, I read lots of science books. So, like when my mom went to have the talk with me, I was like, I already read about it.
Yeah, I was like, hey, Mom, let me. I'm not even kidding. I probably at that age, I probably knew more than my mom did, and even still, my mom.
But the thing is, so there's the physiological aspect that they can teach about, but even more important, really, is the people aspect, respecting each other, and like they teach even small children now. Can't think of the right term.
Not to objectify one another.
Well, no, not that. That's not where I was going. Where I was going is what are it's all right to not want to hug grandma. It's all right to not want to have someone touch you. There are good touches. There are good touches and bad touches. That's the phrase I was looking at. That children are being taught there are good touches and bad touches. And to sort of, part of that is to respect other people. If you, there are often little girls and little boys, sometimes at a very young age, who just love going around hugging all other kids. Don't want to be hugged. I would have been one of the kids who didn't want to be hugged. I don't like people. Even as a baby, my mom said people would try to cuddle me, and sometimes I just push them away. I'm not a huggy kind of person. It doesn't mean I'm not affectionate. Just I don't like that unwanted physical intimacy. And other people might not consider that the same way.
Yeah, I certainly didn't.
Teaching people about their bodies in not only the physiological way, but what they have a right to their own body. You have a right to say no if someone touches you in a way you don't want to be touched. And introducing good touches, bad touches, start to teach children about the fact that there are people out there who do bad touching. It's also a way to help kids learn boundaries and to respect other people's boundaries.
No, I think it's a good idea. No, I think it's a really good idea. Because especially if they learn the difference early, if something is happening to them, they can come forth. They don't have to,
right.
They have an understanding that this is not right. Now, I think intuitively they probably do. I think I've never been molested, but I mean, from what I understand from people that have been, they did sense that something wasn't quite right. But if they are taught these things, then then they can actually tell somebody, right? And as soon as they start telling somebody, then people can act upon it, obviously. Does that make sense?
And, yes. And if you start setting the foundation for this for children, once as they start to, their hormones start to get in and they start to become interested in sex, you've got a foundation here to build on to talk about and romantic interactions as well as sexual interactions. When are you being too in pursuing someone, for example? We've
all had that problem. I'm not gonna front on that. You gotta learn when you're growing up what's just too much. Matter of fact, my first girlfriend, this literally had told me the other day, one of my very first I've known since I was 16. She's gone nuts, but she used the word stalking. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Now you kind of, that's a whole different ball game, right? But she, of course, been through 30 years of an abusive relationship with a narcissist. She got very down on men. So I didn't take it personally because all my friends that know us know that never was something that ever happened. But in her mind, because I was pursuing her, I'd walk 3 miles from my high school because I didn't have a car to see her by her request. Things have changed over the years. And so, in her mind, she, kind of used that word stalking. And I was like, okay, I don't want to confront her because I know she's been through so much crap over the last 25 30 years because she was abused with her husband and it was a horrible thing, and I understand she's jaded, so I can't take it personally, right? But even still, you look back and go, okay, so I was 16 and I was pursuing her with letters and walking to her high school. Now that people can think that's stalking, that's pretty scary actually. But
it is for, I would not consider someone that age a stalker. I would consider someone that age being romantically obsessed because that's what you do at that age.
It was puppy love. That's more than I really did care about her. I still do in a way. So,
but that's the other thing that kids need to understand. There is stalking and there is puppy love, but there is a point at which you say to a child, okay, look, if you're getting too obsessive, you're just going to turn someone away. You need to learn to set boundaries. And kids are going to break them. That the rule of being a teenager is you're going to break every boundary. Because that's actually what you're supposed to do. Because you're supposed to be developing your own self.
Yeah, exactly. But it still hurts to hear those. Trust me, because I have a lot of ex-girlfriends. You see my Facebook page. None of them think that way, and so even for one of them to even use that word, even in that way, it bothered me. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, she's looking at past history through the lens of everything she's gone through over the last 20-some years.
Right, and that's why I stopped the conversation.
And it happens, and it wouldn't surprise me if some of the accusations that have come out against people and will come out in the future are the same sort of thing. People looking back at something and describing it in a completely different way. But yeah, so
I totally agree.
I said it's not just about the physical act, although yes, they do need to learn, okay, how to use a condom. You may think pulling out works, but guess what? There's some emission even before you pull out, and it's not safe. Don't think it's safe. And there are kids who think, oh well, we'll just have anal sex, and they need to understand. Some people get really upset because some children are being taught about anal sex. What they don't understand is, you've seen the I think everybody here has probably seen the video, "Fuck me in the ass because I love Jesus."
It's hilarious. I'm not gonna lie.
It's hilarious, and you've got to see it if you haven't seen it. But the point of that came out of something that has really been happening, because some kids, either to avoid pregnancy or so that the girls can still remain virgins on their wedding day, because they're very religious, some kids in high school have said, well, we'll just have anal sex. That way her hymen's still intact and she can't get pregnant. But there are dangers to any kind of sex. There have been a while, I shouldn't laugh because this isn't funny, but a while back I was doing some reading about the Hasidic Jews and the very insular communities of Hasidic Jews, and the fact that they don't teach a lot of sex education. And so when a couple gets married, apparently there have been some situations where the woman has ended up in the hospital because the husband has been too aggressive with her, having anal sex because he didn't know a vagina existed.
Okay.
Now, that's an extreme, I admit. There's also this thing called soaking that apparently came up in some Mormon communities, and there's oh crap, I can't remember the name of it right now, but the Amazon that made fun of that. So the kids, the theory behind soaking is that a man penetrates the woman, or boy penetrates, however you want to look at it, girl, still. Because if you move, you're letting the devil in. It's not really sex because you're not moving. It's really stupid.
Religious people have weird ways of trying to get. Well, actually, it's funny that the name of that the YouTube video you're talking about, it was called The Loophole, by the way. Right. They're trying to find loopholes, and by the way, it's Garfunkel and Oates, and I love Kate Micucci. She's from Big Bang Theory, and she's a comedian. Mm-hmm. Love her. She's so talented, and she's so cute. But anyways, they're always trying to find these ways around these things. It's like, oh, I believe very strongly, but if I do this, God's going to look the other way. He's going to say, okay, that's okay. It's just weird to me.
Back when the whole Clinton Monica Lewinsky scandal happened, said he did not have sex with that woman. Well, somebody, I don't remember who, did a poll, and they asked people in the country if they thought that oral sex was sex, and a surprisingly amount of people said no.
Of course it's sex. It's a type of sex.
Of course it's sex. There's a I can't remember, it's a movie called, I think It's Only Sex or something like that, and the guy gives an answer that at the time I would have agreed with completely. His answer was, if somebody is in the same room with me, we're having sex.
So wait a minute. I've been raped by a lot of people then.
No, yeah, well, what I mean at the time. So in other words, if someone's in the room with you and you're jacking off or whatever,
Oh, okay.
it's still sex between the two of you. That's what I mean.
Oh,
However, I would
okay.
change that.
Okay.
This was in the pre-internet days. So I would change that today to say that if on the phone or online with someone and they know you're doing something, then you're having sex. Because the whole point of one of the points of the movie was, well, what is sex and what isn't? You know, is it sex if you're masturbating and someone's watching? Are you two having sex if you're masturbating and someone's watching?
Cyber sex is considered to be sex.
Yeah, as the guy said,
broadly speaking,
you know, as the guy said, as long as someone's in the same room with me, I consider us having sex, which is, I thought, you know, that was actually pretty good answer, because there's a participation in there, even if it's just watching.
Yeah, usually
you're right. People
use that this after many hours of begging, but yeah,
but that's the thing. People will try to find a way to get around the rules, no matter what the rules are. At one time, that I don't know if it's still happening, but a lot of high school kids were having oral sex, and this wasn't long ago. It was maybe 10 years ago.
I found that out after I actually got out of high school. Because that's just funny, but it's true. I had found out that a lot of girls in our marketing class did a lot more things than I had realized.
Right, because
but actually, one of them,
it was considered not real sex.
Yeah, well, I had one girl, and I still talk to her, right? And I didn't even realize at the time, but she had to remind me that her and I had hooked up back in I don't know. Well, I know it was in high school, but I don't remember it was junior or senior year. And I always thought she was adorably cute. And I didn't remember it was her. And I felt bad because she was like, Steve, that was like my first experience at certain things. And I was like, I felt so bad.
Oh no.
Yeah, she's like, I compared everybody because I mean, I guess I had talent at a very early age. And I was like, I remember doing it. I remember the instance, but I didn't remember for the life of me over all these years who that person was. It just completely escaped my mind, right? She reminded me on Facebook about a couple months ago. She's like, do you remember this experience? And I'm like, oh my God, that was you. I was like, how
embarrassing.
Yeah, and this was public too. This was actually public.
It doesn't make any difference, you know, how you're raised. The hormones are incredible. That's something kids need to know. It's like you sit them down and say, kids, guess what? You're going crazy for the next few years because your hormones are going to drive you nuts. But it's all right. You'll get through it and you'll make mistakes.
Oh, I didn't.
We love you anyway.
Yeah. And by the way, somebody says, Eric W says, Steve wasn't looking at her face. This is true. Yeah.
But no, everybody makes mistakes when they're a kid. Or a young adult. You sleep with the wrong person. And then you find notes on your door for the next 6 months or something, you know, or whatever.
The worst I had is
phone calls.
I had a person that followed me around to like the bar and stuff like that. And when I finally told her I wasn't going to go out with her again, she broke my car window.
Well, I dated this guy for a while because I felt I didn't sleep with him or anything, but it was just like I was sort of pushed into it. And anyway, I started dating this guy, and then I kind of quit dating him because this wasn't working. But he would call me constantly and say he was going to kill himself if I didn't go out with him.
Yeah, that's a little fucked up.
And you just, you know, you deal with that. And I was, 19, I guess. And it's annoying. It's exasperating. And there were times I wanted to tell him, just fucking do it.
Yeah, my age now, I'd be like,
I didn't mean it, of course, but stop doing that.
Yeah, I had something just a little actually recently get a little overbearing with me, and I was just like, I'm not interested. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like she was unattractive or anything. She was actually quite attractive, but it's, you know, different part of the world, different. It's just it didn't feel right to me, and so it got a little bit much, and I'm like, you know, I gotta put the kibosh on this.
Steve, the beard and the hair are getting to you. You need to cut them off.
She liked it. Don't hate, man. Don't hate.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, don't tell a man they need to cut off stuff unless, you know. Yeah.
You want to know what my grandpa actually calls a beard? A clit tickler.
Yeah. Well, you want to hear a funny joke?
That's a mustache.
Just before I had this hangout, I went to the store, and this guy in front of me was this pretty buff black guy with this goatee, and the only thing I could think of was Mine's bigger than yours, and I felt so racist for thinking it. I was like, yes, mine's bigger than yours.
Yeah.
My beard is bigger
Well,
than
anyway,
yours,
do you wanna-
asshole.
I don't know why. I was like,
you
am I
wanna go back
racist
to the
for thinking
words?
this? What?
I said, do you want to go back to the words?
Yeah, let's go back to the words. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so what word do you want to do next? Entitlement or diversity?
Well,
Because I want to say the other
I
two.
don't think we need to go too much into entitlement and diversity. We know why that they want to change that.
Okay, just cursory thing on it. I mean, what does entitlement have to do with the CDC? Again, do you think it has to do with health and safety? And then
I think it has to do. I think both of these I think some of these for the most part have to do with the fact that this is just a rollout throughout the Health and Human Services Department.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I hope health and
they're more relevant for entitlement and diversity.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the last two because these I think are really the most telling.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say let's go to those two.
We're going to save science-based for last, but evidence-based. I don't know how anybody could come up with anything other than what evidence-based means. I mean, something is based upon evidence. Now, does that always make something true, or is that always the best way to look at things? Well, perhaps there are arguments to say otherwise, but generally speaking, science is evidential. Science is evidence-based, no question about it. So do you think that the reason they don't want to have evidence-based is because they wanted to maybe sneak in the back door things like maybe homeopathy or alternative medicine or things of that nature?
Creationism.
Well, okay. Well,
yeah,
creationism as well. Sure.
Yeah.
The CDC is
yes.
kind of focusing on that. Yeah.
I think it is, and I think it has to do with vaccines as well.
Why would they be trying to tell the CDC about? I mean, do you think Trump and the administration are anti-vaxxers as well?
Trump
Wow.
has said some anti-vax things.
Holy crap!
And
yeah, Trump's
some of
been
them
on both
have been.
sides of the fence.
Yeah, well, no, Trump has sort of towed the line where he's one of those people who says that, oh, I'm not against vaccination, but he's somebody you would say is pro-safe vaccine, which is completely fucking vacuous when you think about it. But
right,
it's the idea that you would instead space out the vaccines as opposed to giving them when it is advised by the pediatrician or the family doctor. If the family doctor says, okay, now is the appropriate time to give the vaccines, listen to your fucking doctor.
Yeah.
If
you're not going to listen to them, don't go to them.
Jade, I'm gonna be right back, so you have it for the next 3 minutes.
Oh, by the way, I have mods.
Okay. I have mods. Anybody else have mods? I have mods.
I have mods.
I have mods.
Oh
I guess. Yeah,
what I wanted to say there is that Trump has said in the past, used a similar thing to what a lot of other people have said, which is, I knew a child who was fine until after they had the vaccines, and then they were diagnosed as autistic. Made the assumption he's talking about his own son. We don't know that. So, but people have made that assumption. Nobody actually knows that. But he has said, and you've heard, I'm sure most of you out there have heard people say something like that, someone in power. The actor, God, I can't remember his
my own mother said that. I was like, seriously?
Yeah, Robert De Niro said that. He's hopped onto the anti-vax. Even what Robert is it Robert Kennedy Jr.? I forget which Kennedy has jumped on that bandwagon too, and he's saying some really, really stupid stuff. And I thought he was a really smart guy. But people, the problem is that the vaccines are given at about the same time autism diagnoses come about. Correlation does not mean causation. There's a website out there.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I said, there's a website out there. Somebody can maybe remind me of where it is. Don't remember. Find all sorts of interesting correlations. I think one of them has to do with what's his name? Nicolas Cage movies and something. So, just because you see a pattern doesn't mean those two things are connected. Sometimes things just
I don't know.
happen.
Shit movies equals shit information, so.
This is like, I don't remember what it is, like Nicolas Cage movies, and I was going to say gun violence, and then I stopped to think, well, that might actually work. But it was something like Nicolas Cage movies and the flu virus or something. Something completely unconnected. But there are lots of correlations you could. What, Midnight? I'm sorry.
How the hell could you link Nicolas Cage movies? I'm so confused right now.
It's actually a process called p-hacking, which is if you take a large body of things, you begin fiddling with the numbers until you get something that is statistically significant, and you can draw positive correlations to things like having an innie belly button to preferring yoga.
Yeah, but that's the point. And there has been a ton of research into vaccines. It just shows no correlation whatsoever between vaccines and autism.
Yeah, that's been debunked so many times. I think I read somewhere that the original report was made by either a lawyer or someone else. It was
Dr. Andrew Wakefield.
It was by a doctor because of a lawyer. I forgot the story right now. It's been years since I read that.
Yeah.
Andrew Wakefield published a paper in The Lancet many decades ago, and it was revealed that he had faked his results, even though they weren't statistically significant, that he faked, and he had his medical license revoked.
Well, not only that,
his with jail as well.
His subject pool didn't match what he said it did.
Yeah, no, he flat out lied about everything in it.
Yeah, there is a great interview. I'm going to find it later.
It's a patent for something that would have benefited him if he had his way.
Yes, he had just put in for a patent on for a new vaccine or something like that. So in other words, this was all self-serving. This is where I was going to go. I don't remember if it's on Cliff Jumper's channel or Fiona's channel. I'll have to look. If somebody out there knows, let me know.
Yeah, but Jay, this is why stuff like that is why people don't trust science. Just putting it out there.
Right. Yes. So it's on Cliff's channel. Anyway, it's an interview Cliff Jumper and Fiona had with one of the guys who was, instrumental in exposing this. I want to know about it. You should see that. There's another one. I think it's Concordance, who went through Wakefield's research to show how he faked it. Not only did he lose his license, he then fled England for the United States. And he's now causing trouble here. But no, also, again, I don't remember whose channel it was. I'll have to look. Fiona and I and some others, and Cliff was there too. We went through this paper. And Fiona was like really mad when she read this paper that suggested a correlation between autism and vaccines. And they were looking at a group of children who had bowel problems. And one of the things in Andrew Wakefield's alleged study was bowel problems. And I'm going to find that. I'll make a note to find that one and to find the other two, the Cliffs and the other one on Concordance, and I'll post them all together in the GDC on G+. What happens? We went through this paper, and it's a terrible, terrible paper. It's also published in a non-prestigious journal, to put it mildly. One of the interesting things was that there was an Excel file. Of course, I'm an Excel junkie. Excel file to take a look at the data, and I was just, what the fuck? Okay, without going into all the other problems with this study, I'm not a scientist, but I took one look at the cell file. Look, every single one of these subjects who had autism was on some kind of a special diet. Not always the same diet. They're all on different diets. I mean, not every single one of them isn't on a unique diet, but like 2 or 3 are on this diet, another group are on another diet. They were all on special diets. Control group were on special diets, or at least they weren't listed. And yet this is all about bowel problems?
I don't know. His idea was that the measles virus was retained to the gut or something.
Yeah. So this is the thing. How on earth can you do a study where your control group doesn't match? There are too many variables. You're not only talking about autism, you're talking about, and you know, one group is autistic and on a special diet, and the other group is not autistic and not on a special diet. Right there's two criteria. But to make it even more complicated, a whole bunch of different special diets. How the hell can you come to any conclusions with that when you're talking about digestive problems?
Hey, Jade, I think I found it. Is it Wakefield Smoking Gun? The video title? I put the link in the side there so you can check it out later.
Yeah, yeah, it's on concordances.
Okay.
He looks very handsome. Kidding.
Uh-huh.
But
He looks like what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure this is it. And I'll try to find the other two that I'm talking about too. But this paper, as I said, it you know, it's not even up to grad student standards, and yet predatory journals out there, and there are some online speculative journals. So you have to be careful what you're looking at. So if someone were to come up and say, but yeah, look at all these papers that show that there's a link between autism and vaccines, what papers are you talking about? Where were they published? What kind of journals did these come from? Did they even come from journals? People don't know what they're looking for.
Blog post.
I went through Matt Slick's carm.org on homosexuality. And I looked up every single statistic that I could find that he lists. And it's under a section called Statistics on Homosexuality. They are all fraudulent in one way or another.
Oh.
But this is the point I want to make. Several of them, I think 3 of them, aren't papers at all. They're proposals for a paper.
And a lot of them link back to the FRC.
Right. And it's just, you know, it's utter bullshit. But the point I'm trying to make is he's got these things listed. They aren't even papers. You know? And some of the things they're linking are articles. They're not papers at all. They're articles. That's meaningless. I'd like to, again, go sideways in a different direction. You may have heard a lot about how some people say, well, in the 1970s, scientists thought we were going to have a new ice age. They didn't. There were a few scientists who speculated that under certain circumstances, we might have a dramatic cooling. There was really only one scientist, and I remember this guy.
You might have a what? I think you broke up a little.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Well, yeah, no. You know, you said we might have and then it went to something else.
Okay. Well, we might have a rapid cooling that could lead to. Well, this was mostly promulgated on the news media by one guy who apparently loved the attention and hopped from TV show to TV show. But it was also largely based on a Newsweek article. So, and I have the Newsweek, by the way. This stuff, I find and buy it. So this whole idea that during the 70s, scientists thought we were going to go into a new ice age is based on mostly a Newsweek article. So people don't know. In some cases, I know a lot of the climate change deniers that are using this information know that they're lying. They know darn well that they're lying. But the general public doesn't. People don't know how to tell a good journal article from a bad journal article. Some people don't seem to understand that an article in or an article online or an article in a magazine is not the equivalent of a journal paper. Even if you're going to something like Science, you know, one of the science magazines, Scientific American, various different magazines like that. National Geographic had a major flub once because they were so busy trying to get an exclusive. If you know, those magazines are great. I read them too. But if I want to know more, I will look for the actual research to find out what's going on. Or I will go to certain science blogs that I know are really good. There's one that's by a guy who's a skeptical biochemist, and he knows his stuff, and he writes really, really well. So I will go to places like that to get more. If the journal articles are beyond me, you know, if it's in a field I don't understand or don't understand very well, I can go to a site where, as I said, like certain blogs that will talk about things they know a lot about, and that will help me understand. And sometimes after reading that information, I can then go to the paper and understand what they're talking about, words or their methods and so on and so forth, because they're discussing equipment, machinery, chemicals that I have no clue about. It has not been taught how to do research. The average person has not been able to taught how to tell real scientists from faux information.
Well, see, that's what people like Hogan and Wakefield are counting on. You know, you've got all these people and they're hyping all this stuff, and everybody's starting to go, and not everybody, but a lot of people are going, oh gosh, we're doomed. You know, listen to what Hogan said, or Wakefield, or this person or that person said. And they are banking on that very thing, Jade, that people will not take time to dig deeper and look into the stuff, really look into the stuff.
Yeah, I guess it depends on personality. Like, you know, I guess if you don't have the personality to look into stuff, like, I don't know, maybe maybe it's not, it doesn't matter on personality, it's on else. You know what I mean? You know, there are a lot of factors and variables that probably go into it, but if you don't, you know what I mean? I guess it depends on the personality.
Well, it has. Well, I think you have a point. It has to do with inclination. I'm a data file. I'm a data fanatic. It's just my nature. I will look up things to the nth degree. I will go. I enjoy this. I actually had someone say to me, I was telling them about how I go, or, you know, writing as comments, you know, in Google, how I go out and I buy. Not only do I buy the creationist literature, I buy it used, by the way. You know, I go to abebooks.com or to amazon.com and buy used books. And I also go and look for the books that the creationists use as their basis for their lies. I think I've mentioned for how it took me several years to find the books by Dr. Niels Herbert Nielsen. And I had them shipped from Germany. I was really excited to finally get them. It's really one book in 2 volumes. And someone said, well, geez, how sad? And I'm like, what do you mean sad? Now, this is exciting to me. This kind of stuff. Everybody doesn't. Everybody's different. I used to work for a woman who could talk about decorating for hours. I would zone out after a short period of time.
Yeah.
So everybody's different.
I seem to be like cliff jumper and trains.
Yeah, I love trains, but Cliff can even, be too much for me. But he will tell you, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, he seems to be interested in science, but he just, I don't know, he can't get into it. He and I talked about this. I think it was even on air also. I don't know. He just, I guess he tries to, but it doesn't like it. But actually, no, never mind. I don't want to put words in his mouth. So if only he was here, he could probably say it better.
Well, from what I understand, Cliff Jumper has one of the biggest channels around for his trains. So I just say,
oh yeah,
popular channel. Yeah. I don't know that channel. I don't have anything to do with trains, but he has a really successful train channel on YouTube, believe it or not.
He's written for train magazines.
Yeah, he knows. He, you know, I tell you, you know, it could be dry, and I think it is because I'm not a big fan of trains. But if you ever want to learn something about trains, dude, he's your guy. He knows. Oh my God,
I've been trains. Yeah, you know, I've been like, you know, I've been called an information hoarder by someone, which I suppose is kind of right, but
yeah. Another.
Why would you want to be a hoarder?
I was just going to add to something Jade said right quick, if I may. She was talking about digging deeper into things and getting books and stuff like that, and tracking down information. Tony Reed is a great example of this, because I think he was asked, where did he get his information, or how did he come up with this stuff? And he said that he would actually start with the creationist claim, and then look at the resources and stuff that they use, that they link to, or whatever. He would start going through those, and then just keep going and digging deeper through those things.
And that's the best way to go about it. I think the best way to fight against anti-science is to actually go look to see what they're saying and then research it.
Well, I've learned a lot.
Yeah, but how many people do that, Steve?
Yeah, but that's the thing.
There are a lot. No, there are. I disagree. I think there are a lot of them that do, but the ones that don't.
But the majority of them probably don't. I'm sure there's a lot of people like Jade out there who do it, but aren't as active in these discussions as she is. But they're out there,
and I don't expect everybody to be like me. I realize that that's my thing. I love that. Everybody doesn't love it.
Well, to be fair, like I've always assumed that Jade's thing was fact checking.
Well, that too.
Yeah, I mean, if you want somebody to do a proper fact checking, then she's probably your person. Yeah.
I mean, Steve can probably attest to this. My thing is learning. A lot of things. I mean, just ask Steve again.
Yeah, you like to learn.
I will refrain from my joke.
I will say I've learned a lot from creationists.
We all have.
I have, when you're talking about books and the sources that they use, a creationist was talking about tree rings and how they're unreliable. Because sometimes you can have two tree rings.
I didn't know what dendrochronology was until it was brought up by creationists. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I knew what it was.
I didn't know what it was until it was brought up by Kent Hovind. And oh, look, dendrochronology disagrees with Kent Hovind's view.
Yeah, go figure.
I can't remember which site it was. AIG or one of those, and they were talking about how it's unreliable because sometimes you can have double rings in a year. More than one ring in a year. One of the resources they used was a government publication from like 1965, something like that, 65, 66. Well, I found it. I actually found it. Took quite a search, but I found it and I bought it. And it's really good. And it's really informative. I've learned a lot about how they
Doesn't it point out that even though there are some types of oaks, I think it was, that do have double annular rings, they also have no ring for a particular year. And so on the average, it actually equals out.
But there's several problems with what they're saying, but I'll get to this book in just a second and what was so important about it. For one thing, there are certain trees that do have more than one, and they're in the tropics. And scientists don't use those for dendrochronology.
Yeah, there's certain trees that only
they
do
don't
that.
use those because they know that they have more than one ring a year. That will put on more than one ring a year when they are young. Scientists also do not use those kinds of trees for dendrochronology because they know they put on more than one ring a year. Brought up something else altogether. What these people were talking about, and they were totally disingenuous. There is something in tree rings called lensing. What happens is if a tree, now for those of you who don't, I don't know how many people know this, the growing portion of a tree is right under its bark. Narrow strip goes all the way around the tree, and it's called the vascular cambium. This is why if you ring a tree, you ring trees to kill them. In other words, you cut a big, you make a big cut, because a shallow cut the tree can grow over. You make a wide cut, cambium, all the way around the tree. It will kill everything above the vascular cambium. Just to, when people were clearing, clearing an area to farm, one year they ring a tree and it would die, and other people have done it for future firewood. It would ring trees and they would die, so then the next year firewood. That way you don't have to cut up the tree and stack it and let it dry. It's already dry. But this vascular cambium, I said, it's right under the bark. Some trees have very redwood trees out here, thick bark. Some trees have thin bark. If a beetle or a bug that bark and damages the vascular cambium, you will get a sort of a lens effect there. Extra ring. Now, this could also happen. You have a great storm and a rock hits the tree or something, and it damages the vascular cambium. Lens effect there. And at that particular point, it will look like an extra ring. And this book had a lot of lovely pictures of trees sliced through. One end of the tree, so to speak, tree rings, and at the other end, you could see this lensing effect. And if you were to count the rings at that end, you'd have one extra ring. But here's the thing. Know this. One of the problems with these creationists is they seem to assume that scientists are stupid. That scientists don't know that trees in the tropics have more than one ring. They don't know that certain trees, when they're young, have more than one ring. And apparently they're completely lensing. So when scientists take samples for tree rings, they take more than one sample from a tree, just to start with, from different directions, because they know lensing can exist. They also, if they are dating a particular area, they will take samples from many trees. And sometimes they will take a sample from lower down on a tree, another sample from higher up on a tree. The exceptions are something like the bristlecone pines, because there just aren't a lot of them that are the same age, right? They're all the really old bristlecone pines are unique trees. So you're not going to see people, getting, if you take 5 different bristlecone pines, they're all going to be 5 different ages because that's what they're like. But if you're dating a forest, you're going to be taking samples from all these different trees and comparing them and taking more than one sample from a tree. So I didn't know that's how they did it. I also didn't know that there's an interesting device that scientists actually put on a tree, and it measures the growth of the tree ring. Measures the growth of the vascular cambium. So they can actually see the rate at which these tree rings grow. Was the wealth of information. It also compared similar types of trees in different locations, and you could look at the data and see what the differences were in the different environments. Excuse me. This is the kind of work scientists actually do to understand dendrochronology. And yet these creationist sites make it look like somebody goes out, drills a hole, takes a tree ring sample, dates that tree ring sample, and then says, oh, the entire forest is this old. And it's based on nothing. And scientists don't know why there are multiple tree rings in certain types of trees and in certain types of environment. It's huge, big lie that they tell by omitting all this information. And I just learned a ton from that book. So thank you, creationists, for being a bunch of disingenuous fuckwits.
Well, it's like some of the conversations we get into here, or in the, when we're in the post or on Facebook. Someone will say something and you're like, okay, I know this is wrong, but I'm not exactly sure why it's wrong. But something don't sound right. So like you said, you start doing research and stuff. It's incredible at things that I've forgotten a lot of it, but I do make notes. I've got this whole thing of notepad things that I have information and websites and excerpts from these websites on all kind of different subjects. Things that I can refer back to. And the knowledge is out there. But they'll say something really dumb, and you go, okay, well, let's see, how is this wrong? And then you start finding all this stuff, and you bring it up to them, and they're like, what? No, you're wrong. That's it. So evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. Okay, well, tell me why it is. Pick out the points of evolution or things, that you think are wrong and tell me why they're wrong. That goes nowhere. You know, they can't come back with information unless maybe they bring up some bullshit from Ken Hovind or somebody like that.
Well, and Ken Hovind
never change.
Yeah. Ken Hovind loves to bring up polystrate trees, and yet there actually is no such a thing.
They're not trees to begin with.
Well, they're not trees to begin with, but they're also not polystrate, because what that means is what they're trying to tell you is these trees are growing through different geological strata. They're not. They're growing through different layers in the same geological stratum.
Yeah, but they're not even trees. They're lycopods, which are not considered to be actual trees.
They're giant club mosses.
Yeah, lycopod is a club moss, but I think we're kind of diving into creationism here rather than the.
Yeah, we are. Let's get back to it's really easy to go off on the related things. Yeah.
Welcome to the CDC, but I have this video out there, and I have this video promoted under his hashtags relating to the CDC 7 duty words. So I kind of like to get it back on target, in case people start watching or watch this later on. But the last word we got to talk about, actually, it's a compound word, is science-based. The most destructive of all of them, because this goes to the heart of the agenda that Trump and his cabinet, his appointed cabinet, seems to be wanting to do is remove science-based curriculum and remove things from the realm of science to allow alternate types of things in, including, like you were talking about earlier, things like anti-vaxxing, creationism, climate change, all these things that scientifically we have a vast amount of knowledge about, but they don't understand. And I'll be the first person to say, and again, I am not speaking from any position of authority whatsoever, because I'm a pure layperson. But I could, in my humble opinion, I think Trump is probably the most inept scientific person ever to be ever in office of any kind. He just doesn't seem to even remotely grasp anything about science.
Wow, and you're comparing him to George W. Bush.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, George Bush was probably not. Well, I mean, he wasn't too heavy in science either. But I mean, so I think what it is these people don't know about the science. Therefore, they have this. They want to take this narrative of epistemic uncertainty that, because I don't understand science, therefore nobody understands science, and therefore we can't be sure about anything in science, and therefore let's take these alternate approaches. And that's not how science is done. And so when they're advocating things like this, especially when they say, that the CDC needs to promote these things by means of community standards and wishes, that's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, because you're now saying that the community gets to dictate what is science and what is not science. Well, they could fuck off with that. That is what everybody in this community has been fighting against since day one. That is what every content creator I know that promotes, scientific-based education and atheism, or even Gnosticism, or even humanism, or whatever you want to call it. And even there's a lot of theists out there as well. It goes beyond ideological things. This is a group of people that is fighting against science for a political agenda. Period.
And you know what worries me about this change that's coming through is the fact that the people who are honestly dedicated and diligent at the CDC, I don't know how they're going to handle that. In a lot of other instances, like people in the EPA they basically resigned from their positions in protest. Where does that leave us? What kind of person is going to fill in that position if they're not scientifically literate?
Okay, let me ask you this.
That are Trump cronies doing these jobs, and there are consequences of that.
You brought up something that I had thought about before. So let me kind of go down this path. You had brought up that because people feel ethically that they cannot abide by this stuff, that they resign. And I understand that. I really, really do. However, doesn't that produce a void that they can fill with somebody who does feel the exact same way as them? And so you're kind of you're kind of compounding the problem in that regard, are you not?
Yes, but I mean, it's happened in several instances. The whoever ran the head of the ethics department, he quit because he didn't feel like he could do his job. Well, now there's someone in that position that is totally just gonna okay everything that Trump does because he's handpicked by Trump. And it's been the same thing with started in Florida when the governor there started mandating rules on how that state could report. It's I mean, people know that this is a real like conundrum. Like, do you stay and play by their rules and continue to do the job, or do you protest and leave and allow that position to be filled by someone who's gonna set us back a decade?
Exactly. It's a tough call. Ethically, I don't know what I would do, because you have two huge ethical considerations. One, if I left the office, somebody's going to be put in, which is going to be a crony. And two, if I stay, am I facilitating the narrative, what they're telling me to do? Am I just being complacent in this? I think, though, what I would probably do is I would keep the position, but I would balk at it at every possible turn I had and fight against it from the inside, if that was possible. But again, that's probably not always, something to be able to be done. But I think that when you have somebody who has ethics and they leave, you're more likely to get somebody in that doesn't have the same ethical considerations and will play by their rules, I guess you could say. Like you said, rubber stamp everything. So what should somebody do in the CDC? I mean, what do you think they're going to do about this as a whole? Because I think most people in the CDC probably do have ethics. They probably all think this is ridiculous. So what is your recommendation?
I don't know if I have one. I don't know what those positions entail and how much pushback they have. But I imagine that most of them are going to feel that they're being handicapped in terms of how they can work and deal with their positions, and they'll end up leaving. But I think the good thing for us is these people are so dedicated that their leaving is really going to be to set up some sort of independent oversight company that tries to keep these people who get put into those positions honest. I think that's what we'll end up seeing from this.
Do they have? I mean, what happens if they don't abide by this? I mean, what is the retribution they would have on themselves if they just said, "Screw you, we're going to use these terms"? Can they even do that? Is there legality issues? I have no idea.
I'm not sure either. I'm sure they can be let go of for cause if they don't follow the guidelines.
Sure,
but
I think
it's probably more difficult to get rid of them if they play by the game.
Yeah, again, that goes
better
to play by their rules and at least try to be still in the system to fight against it, or maybe, like you said, set up an alternative thing where they can provide an oversight. And
I think a lot of them see this as, hey, most of this is another 7 more years of this garbage, and sanity will come back. So I think, again, that's a reason that a lot of them will just be like, I'm going to step out. And comes in, we'll be able to, lobby them to get our positions back, or at least get someone competent to run these positions in the future.
Let me ask
the problem are these lifetime appointments where,
yeah,
I don't know if you saw some of the judges they put up that were being interviewed by Republicans and they had no legal experience whatsoever.
You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a lawyer. I found out.
You don't have to be, but we really prefer that you know a little bit about the federal court system before you become a judge.
I didn't know that, though. I didn't know that. I guess, and this, check me on this, but I think somebody was saying, and I was trying to do some research on it, but you don't have to be a lawyer to be a Supreme Court judge. Or is it state? I don't remember.
State Supreme Court or federal?
You don't have to be.
Yeah, I thought, but that's just unimaginable to me.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to know the law. You could have someone who has a PhD in law, but they've never gone to law school.
Yeah, weird.
There are different, skills involved, and that's why the founding fathers left it open.
Back then, things were America's a bit weird. Like you guys elect judges. That just.
But I was going to say back then things were very different. There were a lot of learned people who did not go to law school.
Correct.
I mean, today things. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like the Trump campaign and their people, they have put up several grossly unqualified people for these positions, whether they're for federal judgeships in different appellate courts or what have you. And they're so inept that even when the people on their side, even when Republicans ask them, hey, have you ever tried a case in federal court? Do you know what any of the things that are involved with this position are? Questions, and they get taken off. It's the reason why a lot of these positions haven't been filled. Trump can't find qualified people to fill these positions. Probably because he doesn't know what to look for.
Do you think they're going to be backlash? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you probably saw that video of that one guy who's never tried a case in any court, who had never taken a deposition on his own, was only involved in depositions something like 20 years ago, right after he got out of law school, couldn't even answer basic questions about law. But he's been, chosen as a judge. And my personal opinion is being a judge is not supposed to be on the job training. You're supposed to know the law before you are appointed as a judge. And he has no experience whatsoever in the kind of law that he will be deciding on when he's a judge, and that's the most important point. It's I understand that law can be very specified. If you want to, if you're dealing with like real estate, you don't want to go to a real estate lawyer if you've been arrested for a criminal case, and vice versa. But this guy has no experience in the area of law, presiding over, and that's scary. And a lot of this, again, involves basic things. Trying a case. He's never tried a case in any kind of court. He's never even brought a case before certain kinds of things. I forget exactly the term. Like a panel or something. I forget what it was. Senator Kennedy who was quizzing him. He'd never taken a deposition. Didn't know some basic terms.
Yeah,
that is very worrisome.
So, do you guys think, though,
Kennedy for actually asking those questions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They need to be asked, though. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But do you think that the next election, if somebody does run on a scientific campaign, they would have a chance? If there's enough of a backlash?
I think a majority of the public is behind that.
I think a lot of them are, but I don't know if it's enough. And I think that everybody out there needs to do whatever they can to help push scientifically based agendas. That's why when they share these videos, they share all the content creator videos. If you like Holy Kool-Aid stuff, because he's really pro on this, and you like, genetically modified skeptic, all of them, share the videos out there. We need to get this stuff going, and especially going to 2018. The more you share videos, the more people can know about these things. And I think the only way there's going to be the next election to get somebody in there to reverse all this shit is starting from the very much grassroots, and start now.
Another thing.
Go ahead.
A number of scientists are now running for office, including here in California. Earth scientist is running for the God, what's his name? The guy I can't stand. Just forgot his name. Isn't that wonderful?
Guy you can't stand is
for office.
Yeah. What is he running?
Here's my dream team for the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
What is he running for?
He's got Bill Nye on there.
Yeah.
Nye and who?
Bill Nye would be a horrible politician.
Yeah. Oh, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
You don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson?
The sexual assault allegations heavy. Still gonna back him?
You don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Jade?
But I like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I've heard no sexual assault accusations against him that are.
I think there were like 3 or 4 of them posted maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, but they weren't credible.
In college.
Oh,
I'm not sure I never heard anything else going on.
I don't know if they
noticed they
disappeared.
You notice those accusations have disappeared.
hello. There we go. I'm back.
Well, I mean, a lot of them disappear. That doesn't mean they're not true.
Well, yeah, but that's a kind of a standard that if you're going to say, yeah, that there's a lot of things that a lot of accusations that may be true, but there are some that may not be true too. And if somebody, we can't make the automatic assumption that everyone is true. We need to have some backing. See, I'm in favor of having an investigation into these things. The difference in Alabama was there were so many people who came forward, and not just the people who claimed that he sexually assaulted them or tried to date them as minors, but the people saying, yeah, we had to keep them out of the malls and we had to keep them away from the cheerleaders and so on and so forth. So police officers came forward. So this is when you have a preponderance of the evidence like that, you go, oh, yeah, no kidding, that guy.
Not if you're in Alabama, then you throw a coin, see whether it lands heads or tails, whether you vote for Roy Moore.
Yeah, well, the fact that he only lost by a point, just it's wow. I mean, it's good. Really, it was that close.
It was
That's
that.
surprising.
I mean,
That's
one point you're talking about maybe like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 votes. That's how close it was.
That's just freaking. Oh my god! I'm dying on that still. But they thought he was going to win. Actually, he was favored.
I thought he was going to win.
I thought he was going to win too, and I'm quite happy he didn't. But still, that was a close call.
Right. Well, what's also interesting is that African Americans in that vote voted, and you don't misunderstand this. When you look at the total vote and you look at the percentage of the total vote, that does not necessarily equal the population, because African Americans in that election voted at a higher rate than they actually are in the Alabama population.
Well, they also voted more heavily than they did for Obama in 2008. They turned out higher, and they were more votes against more than were for Obama percentage-wise in 2008.
Right,
and that was led mainly by African-American women.
But this was at a higher rate than they are in the population. What that means is a whole bunch of white voters didn't vote.
Yes, exactly. They were turned off by everything, I imagine.
Yes, I suspect so. I suspect that there are probably a lot of people who didn't want to vote for Jones. But I mean, God, when you look at that guy's history, how could you not want him? He was so slandered by the other side. It's just unbelievable.
And it was a slimy.
And it's not like Jones was from, Kentucky or another state. He was from Alabama.
Yeah.
He was a homegrown boy. Very respectable.
And he's the guy that successfully prosecuted the men who did the church bombing. Oh, so many years ago. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that. Just horrible. Killed those little girls. He's so far beyond Roy Moore in every single way. But he's a Democrat, and that was it to them. Not his character, not his accomplishments. They absolutely refused to look at anything else except that he was a Democrat.
And in the chat, Uber Acorns is there. He made the same remarks. It didn't matter to him. What mattered to him was whether there was an R next to his name. So that's why he was pro Moore at any cost, regardless whether the accusations were true or not. And I mean, that kind of low level, that low bar, low standard really sickens me when it comes to.
Well, I mean, don't forget. Sorry to interrupt you, but don't forget in the thread this morning. I mean, I'm sorry to bring it up again, but it's kind of, you were there. RC?
Yes, he brought up the vaccine question under a different name for his G Plus account, which is different than his YouTube account. But I mean, it's very sad to see people who have the exposure to the right information, but decide to turn that part of their brain off what they think they want.
Because they don't trust it. Sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say is about this, the letter by their name is not necessarily the most important thing. Many years ago, I live in a very liberal area. And, almost all of our representatives are Democrats. One year, a guy ran for state office. I don't remember if it was Assembly or Senate. I think it was Senate. The Democratic candidate was pretty odious to everyone. The Republican candidate was a nice guy. Even though this area is heavily Democratic, and I'm sure the Democratic candidate thought he'd win, he didn't. He lost to the Republican candidate. I voted for the Republican candidate. There was no way I was going to vote for that guy. And so we have ultra liberal area sent a Republican to the state house. And you know what? He did such a good job for us. We voted him back in again. Again, that's shocking. A really super liberal area voted not just once, but for a couple more times for a Republican. because he represented his constituency. He did the job that he was voted to do. He represented his constituency. And that's the way things should be. If the guy or woman isn't doing their job, you get rid of them. You don't go by whether they have an R or a D by their name, because there are some people that are just horrible on both sides, or in some independents probably that are horrible. But to pick someone as horrible as Moore, how these people in Alabama are supposed to be Christians? Can they justify that? By what moral standard can they justify that? They can't. That's the point. There's no morals involved in voting for Moore. None.
And the accusations
You're putting them aside. You're throwing them in the garbage.
The accusations against him came from Republican women who are Christians. So, I mean, that's even more unimaginable that you wouldn't listen to people of your faith from your state that believe in the same ideology as you, who are saying this guy's a scumbag. Why would you not consider their opinion? They have no political gain to make by accusing this guy of something he didn't do. It just really, it's really shocking.
Yeah, and as I said, that it's not like there were these accusations from long ago. You know, we can see you, Aravine. I don't know if you want to be on camera or not. Okay, or however you pronounce your name. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly.
Hello. Well, hang on.
okay.
Nobody can hear. The problem is nobody can hear her on the outside without actually unhiding her from broadcast. So if you want to turn off your camera, I can show you. There we go. Awesome. There we go. So
there we go.
Yeah, it actually doesn't actually show on the outside feed if you don't show on broadcast either. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
How do you pronounce your name?
Aravine.
Aravine.
Aravine. Okay.
Aravine.
I was slightly off.
Aravine.
So welcome.
And you got the link from Twitter, I assume, right?
No, not Twitter. Google Plus.
Oh, Google Plus. Awesome. Okay. Just curious. Well, unfortunately, we were just about to wrap this up, but if you have something to add to this, that'd be great.
I was actually told by one of my friends, Nicola H., that you guys were wanting to discuss transgender talk.
Nicola H. has friends? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Nicola. I'm kidding.
Well, let me give you a brief rundown of what happened. All
right.
Okay, the Trump administration has apparently told the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, not to use certain words in financial documents. One of them is the word transgender. And we were discussing that, and I think, this is just my personal opinion, that the reason that they're doing this is because they want to replace it with the term gender dysphoria. And the reason I think that is because I've seen a lot of right-wing sites and right-wing people, more extreme right-wing, do that. And I think the reason that that's done is because they're trying to label being transgender as a mental illness. Because gender dysphoria, transgender people suffer from. They're two different things. So what do you think about that?
Well, gender dysphoria and transgender are two different things. As I am, actually, I have gender dysphoria, which means that I don't accept my birth appearance, meaning like I don't biologically feel like I was assigned to the right sex. That's what gender dysphoria means.
Well, according to the DSM here, DSM-5, gender dysphoria is when someone has problems with that. If, in other words, they need mental health care, psychological counseling.
Right.
But if someone is well adjusted and trans, they're not gender dysphoric. Is that kind of the way you look at it too?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Can I ask?
So yeah, so
how
basically,
old
if
you are? Era, do you mind if I ask how old you are, Aravine?
I am 21.
Okay.
So, Irene, you're agreeing then that generally speaking, if somebody is transsexual and they're at least comfortable enough where it doesn't cause them anxiety or gross amount of inability to function in society, you would not categorize that as a dysphoria.
I don't like to categorize myself. I just, from my therapist herself, she actually diagnosed me with the gender dysphoria, meaning I am not comfortable with what I have down below, meaning like I would want like the surgery in order to feel and look like an actual woman.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Right. So, but as I said, I think they're trying to put a wedge in the door to try to claim that trans people are mentally ill. And I think one of the reasons that they're doing that is so that they can deny surgery.
Yes.
And deny medication. Yeah. Because right now, being trans is, well, just being a little different. You know, some people have a lot of problems with it, some people don't. And
Right.
healthcare plans, including Medicare, conditioning to a certain extent. They'll cover, hormone replacement therapy. They'll cover, again, it here, it varies from state to state, but it'll cover electrolysis to, help remove, facial hair. It'll, and it covers surgery.
Well,
But
with the hormone replacement, actually, it does help with a certain amount of that. Meaning, like with the hair and everything, it means that the more you take the hormones, the less you'll see of the facial hair and other stuff.
Right. But I understand some people still have a little. It can be kind of persistent, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the government or certain elements of the government are able to try to make being transsexual a mental illness, that as grounds to deny, any medical care, deny hormones, deny surgery.
Right.
Which I think is horrible.
And they can also use it to justify things like conversion therapy.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Which has 0 success rate.
Correct.
Right. And has been outlawed in several states.
Evidence-based.
Is that anything like gay conversion therapy?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, Heavy.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a program called Evergreen back years ago that was doing those kinds of experiments, and they involved everything from chemical to electroshock. And it all it did was increase the suicide rate of people and cause them even worse anxiety. It did not. Nobody changed over. There was a few people that they claimed the success rates, but basically it was people just fighting their own nature. They didn't stop thinking the way they thought when they went in. You can't change somebody fundamentally like that. I just don't think it's even physically possible mentally.
Yeah, I can't see it all. Because I hear claims about, oh well, we prayed and he went to church and now he's straight. Honey, you think I believe that shit?
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Well, you
I love you, Evie, but I would never be attracted to a man. It's just not my thing. And I no matter how much you brainwash me, so I could think, okay, if that applies to me, then I got to think the same way for you. You're just not going to be attracted to women. Fair enough. It is what it is. Well, I mean, you're a man. Don't be wrong. I mean, I'm not saying that. I love the beard, but you know that. But I mean, it's just, I might have a beer with you, but I'm not whining and dining you, brother.
And just like I think Heavy is absolutely adorable.
We love Heavy.
But I'm not, in intimate relations with him either because I'm a lesbian. But
you know what's funny? There's a video that was out by Jacqueline Glenn, and I had the highest comment on there. I don't remember the name of the video, but if you go to her video that she did on one of the people on YouTube. I can't remember her name. She's one of the big transgenders, but she was commenting to who was it?
Blair White?
No, I think that was her name. I'd have to look at the video, but anyways, she was saying to Jacqueline that because Jacqueline only likes to sleep with men, that she wouldn't, feel comfortable sleeping with, certain types of other individuals as transsexuals, that she was being bigoted. And I'm like, wait a minute here. You can't, you're basically telling somebody about what they prefer to sleep with. And yet you're the one advocating equal rights, and you're telling somebody else what they can and cannot sleep with. That seems kind of odd to me. I mean, I'm not discriminating because I'm not going to sleep with heavy. He might be the awesomest person in the world, but we're just not. We both would agree with that, for various reasons. But for some reason, they think that, if you prefer this particular thing, I like skinny women, right? Oh, well, you're prejudiced against fat women. No, not at all. Oh, there you go, Heavy. That works for me, sure. But I mean, it was just kind of odd. I thought Jacqueline Glenn made a very good point on that. That's why I commented, and it just happened to be the highest on that video. But does that make sense to you that everybody has their own preferences? And it's look at if you're going to tell people don't judge people because of what they prefer, then make it ubiquitously across the board with that. I don't find anything wrong with that. Some people actually prefer transgenders. I think that's great. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I prefer women. I don't know. I've known a lot of, trans women, and I've never been attracted to them, but then I've never been attracted to most women I've met too. And as you know, being demisexual, I tend to not be attracted at first anyway. If I met some woman who was trans and I, fell in love with her, I would, her friends, I can't tell you that because I haven't been there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I'm not saying anything's not possible, but
yeah,
that's that. I just prefer have a preference.
Well, and like you say, of course, I'm not interested in men, but you like very skinny women. I do not like very skinny women.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I might not meet a woman who is just wonderful in every other way, and she's skinny. That wouldn't be a deal breaker. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
You don't know what, you don't really know what you're going to be like. When you meet people.
We know Isaiah.
I wouldn't want to date a smoker because I can't stand smoking. That's someone who smoked that was just fantastic in every other way. What would I do?
But I give Isaiah a lot of crap because he likes really thick women. I mean, he likes the turkey legs. I think that's his thing. We all know that. He has for years. Fair enough. Right. I particularly don't have that. He does. Great. He doesn't like skinny women. Okay, fine. Leave them for me. It works out great. I think that anybody says, well, you have to have this certain type is doing exactly the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish by saying, you know what, love who you love, be with who you want to be with. Okay, it's just come on.
It's the problem is not, well, we don't even know why we have all of our preferences. Did you meet someone who was utterly awesome when you were 6 years old and was red hair and green eyes or something like that? And ever since then, you just tended to think people with red hair and green eyes are awesome. We don't necessarily, and you may not know why. In a reverse thing, for years, I didn't like girls that I met with red hair and green eyes because I was teased horribly as a small child by this family that lived next to us with a bunch of kids with red hair and green eyes. And for a long time, I didn't know why I had this aversion to people with red hair and green eyes. And one day in a conversation with my mom, she was talking about the kids next door, and boom, it came back to me. And I now knew why I didn't like people with red hair and green eyes. Now, the funniest part about this is I was explaining this at the time to my best friend as we were driving down a hill. And I was saying, so you see, I just didn't like people with red. She started laughing her head off and almost drove the car off the road. And I looked at her puzzled, and I realized she has red hair and green eyes. So clearly I got over that. But it's just, but as I said, I don't know why I didn't, for many, many, many years, I don't know why I had this aversion to girls with red hair and green eyes. But I said, clearly I've gotten over that. But I think maybe when I found out why, is my mom was talking about the kids, and all of a sudden, boom, the whole story, I remembered when I was like 3 and 4 years old and how nasty these girls were. And once I knew the root of it, maybe it went away. I don't know. But we don't know why we have all our preferences. We do. We do. The difference is, whether you have a preference, whether you're putting someone down. Awful because they have red hair and green eyes. Red hair and green eyed people are terrible people. You don't want to have anything to do with them. That's a difference between saying, oh, I love people with red hair and green eyes, or I just am not attracted to them.
I'm a big fan of the whole red hair and green eyes, but I'm Irish.
Yeah, well, I'm Irish too, and so at this point in my life, I think red hair.
Oh, you are Irish too. Yeah, you are.
I think red hair and green eyes is fantastic. But if you'd have asked me when I was 13, I would have had an aversion.
No, I like a really thin blonde bobby haircut when I was a kid, and now I think later on in life I'm going more toward long dark brunettes. But whatever.
Well, and then again, preferences change, and we're not all that rigid either. As I said, I've met women, who were heterosexual, and then they met another woman who just so fantastic they fell in love with her. Because at a certain point, it's like, the sex of the person isn't that important.
I agree.
To some people, other people it might be.
But unfortunately, Jade,
and I've also known women.
Finish up, please. Oh, I just say I've got to bring this to a close quick. So
okay, yeah, we're pretty much done with the 7 words.
Yeah, we're way past our time here. So real quick, Aravine, do you want to add anything on this? And by the way, welcome. Nicola is awesome. We love him. He's just an amazing human being. So any friend of his is obviously a friend of ours. So anything like that?
Yeah, Nicola is all right.
He's cool. He's kind of smart in his own way for being
kind
Canadian. What's that?
Yeah, no. Well, thank you very much for welcoming me. And I'm more than happy to join any other time.
Sweet. We've just now opened up a social commentary section on the GDC, so probably these topics will come up more often than they were before, especially with this news of Trump's war on science and these banning of these 7 words with the CDC that clearly. I was saying before when I first started this today that I thought it was a joke, that I thought it was a parody. I really could not take it seriously that somebody would put forth a mandate to a science-based organization like the CDC, because they have to know the sciences behind these things. They say you can't use science-based, you can't use fetus, you can't use transgender, you can't use diversity. It's like, are you kidding me? This has got to be a joke, but unfortunately it's not. So I do want everybody to be aware of this. I think this is something that we all should be having a backlash against. So I appreciate everybody watching this. Like I said, I want to keep this videos down a little bit because it is out there. Hopefully people will spread this video, put it on G+, put it on Twitter, put it on Reddit, wherever you can find a source that can house videos, start doing these things. Because I'm really going to be pushing a scientific agenda going into 2018, especially with the new podcast coming up. Non Sequitur is going to be a show about science-based things, and Jade is going to be a co-host for many of the episodes. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to be doing one on food, which is going to be awesome. Things with flavonoids and how various cooking methods changes flavor profiles. And it's good. We've got some celebrity chefs coming in, or at least big name chefs, hopefully, or at least trying.
Like Chris Mounty?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like hopefully like big name people. But I don't want to give it too much information out. But I know we have one comedian that I know has been on Conan. One person from Baywatch, hopefully. But anyways, let's wrap it up. So anybody in here want to give a last word on their thoughts is on this, on the whole Trump and the 7 dirty words of the CDC? Kind of want to wrap it up. Heavy?
Pence put him up to it to get back at us for the war on Christmas.
There is no war on Christmas. I don't think there's a war on Christmas. I just don't see it. I really don't. I think that was a thing brought up by Bill. What's his name? Bill O'Reilly was trying to promote that narrative.
Or Josh Fierstein, or first whatever his name is.
Josh, yeah, no, you know what? I don't even know what happened to him. He put out a video a while back, but he kind of fell off YouTube. But
It's
RC, yeah, he was just insane. RC, you want to add something real quick? Real quick.
No, Heavy did a great job.
He did. And you know what? And I'm not even going to expand upon that. Heavy, you did a great job. So that was all last words. Thanks for watching. This guy shares this video all around. Like this video and comment after it uploads, which usually takes about 15 minutes. So thanks, guys.